Imagine one of the most powerful civilizations in human history, a state that grew from a small settlement by the Tiber River into a world-spanning empire. This was Rome, a society that shaped governments, armies, architecture, and laws that still resonate today. At its peak, Rome's influence stretched from Britain to North Africa, from Spain to the edges of the Middle East, ruling over millions and leaving a cultural footprint that defines much of Western civilization. But such extraordinary power did not last forever. Within a few centuries, the mightiest institutions weakened, internal divisions grew, and invasions from beyond the empire's borders shook Rome to its core. How did a civilization so strong in its prime eventually unravel? What mistakes and pressures pushed this superpower toward decline? Join us as we trace the life of the Roman world, from its humble beginnings through its golden age of peace and prosperity to the challenges and final dissolution of its western half. This is not just a story of conquest, but a lesson in how even the greatest empires can fade. The story of Rome begins not with marble palaces or triumphant emperors, but with small communities in central Italy. Over centuries, Rome evolved from a monarchy to a republic, a system of elected leaders and a governing senate. This unique political framework allowed Rome to expand rapidly across the Italian peninsula. The Republic's military strength and strategic alliances gave it dominance over neighboring city-states and tribes. But it was Rome's involvement in the Punic Wars, a series of conflicts with Carthage, that marked its rise as a Mediterranean superpower. From 264 to 146 BC, these wars tested Rome's military and reshaped its destiny. Ultimately, Rome's victories secured control over critical trade routes and territories in North Africa, Sicily, and Spain, opening the door for further expansion. Internal tensions, however, began to surface. Wealth from conquered lands concentrated in the hands of a few, and social inequalities widened. Political rivalry and civil conflicts eventually eroded the Republic's foundations, leading to the rise of powerful individuals who reshaped Rome's political structure. In 27 BC, the Senate granted Octavian the title Augustus, marking the birth of the Roman Empire and ushering in a new era, the Pax Romana, a long period of relative peace and stability. What made Rome so successful in its early years? The answer lies in two key strengths: a disciplined, highly organized military and a surprisingly flexible political system. The Roman Republic wasn't ruled by a king, but by elected officials and a powerful Senate. This government structure allowed Rome to mobilize its citizens into legions, army units so well trained and organized that they became legendary. These legions didn't just defend Rome, they went on the offensive, conquering neighboring tribes and cities, bringing back wealth, slaves, and influence that fueled Rome's growth. By the 3rd century BC, Rome's ambitions had grown far beyond the Italian peninsula, but Carthage, a powerful city-state on the North African coast, had the same ambitions for controlling Mediterranean trade routes. The clash between these two superpowers would define the region's future. The First Punic War, 264 to 241 BC, was fought primarily at sea over control of Sicily. Ironically, Rome started out as a land power with virtually no naval experience. Yet, with typical Roman determination, they built a formidable navy almost from scratch and won decisive battles that forced Carthage to surrender Sicily. The Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BC, is the stuff of legend. The Carthaginian general Hannibal crossed the Alps with war elephants and an army, then invaded Italy itself. For years, Hannibal won battle after battle, humiliating Roman forces on their own soil. But Rome refused to surrender. Eventually, a brilliant Roman general named Scipio Africanus took a bold gamble. He invaded North Africa, forcing Hannibal to abandon Italy and return home to defend Carthage. Scipio's victory there secured Rome's dominance. The Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BC, was less a war than an execution. Rome completely destroyed Carthage, burning the city to the ground, enslaving the survivors, and, according to legend, salting the earth so nothing could grow there again. With Carthage eliminated, Rome controlled the entire western Mediterranean. Rome didn't stop with Carthage. Over the following decades, Roman legions marched across Spain, conquered Greece, pushed into the Balkans, and seized territory in Asia Minor. Wherever Rome went, they built roads, established military forts, and set up administrative systems that tied these diverse regions together. It was empire building on an unprecedented scale. By the 1st century BC, Rome's success had created new problems. Wealth inequality skyrocketed, corruption infected the Senate, and social unrest bubbled throughout society. The Republic's political system, which had worked so well for centuries, began to crack under the pressure. Powerful military commanders started challenging the Senate's authority. Julius Caesar, one of Rome's most famous generals, became so powerful that the Senate ordered him to disband his army. Instead, Caesar made a choice that would echo through history. He crossed the Rubicon River with his army, an act of open rebellion, and marched on Rome. This triggered civil war and effectively killed the Republic. Caesar's assassination in 44 BC was supposed to save the Republic. It didn't. Instead, it triggered more civil wars. Eventually, Caesar's adopted heir, Octavian, defeated his rivals, including Mark Antony and Cleopatra, at the Battle of Actium, and became Rome's first emperor, taking the name Augustus. Under Augustus, Rome entered a remarkable period called the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, which lasted over 2 centuries. Trade flourished across the empire, arts and culture thrived, and Roman law and governance spread to every corner of the empire, creating a shared system that unified incredibly diverse populations. During this golden age, Rome reached its greatest size. Under emperors like Trajan, the empire stretched from Britain to North Africa's deserts, from Spain to the Near East. The Romans' engineering achievements from this era still impress us today. They built aqueducts that carried fresh water across vast distances, constructed road networks that linked cities across continents, and created monumental structures, amphitheaters, basilicas, and temples that still stand. Roman law codified rights and responsibilities in ways that influenced European legal systems for centuries. Roman culture absorbed the best of Greek civilization, but also developed its own distinct identity. Latin, the Roman language, became so widespread that it evolved into the Romance languages we know today: Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. Despite its achievements, the empire couldn't maintain its dominance forever. The very size that made Rome powerful also made it nearly impossible to govern effectively. Political instability increased as emperors were assassinated, succession disputes erupted, and corruption spread through the bureaucracy. Economically, the empire struggled with heavy taxation, over-reliance on slave labor, and devastating inflation. The gap between rich and poor widened dangerously. Perhaps most critically, the Roman military itself changed. Instead of citizen soldiers loyal to Rome, the legions increasingly depended on foreign mercenaries whose loyalty was questionable. In an attempt to manage the empire's complexity, Rome was split administratively between East and West. This seemed practical at the time, but it had unintended consequences. The wealthier eastern half grew stronger, whilst the western half weakened. From the late 4th century onwards, Rome faced relentless pressure from migrating tribes. Germanic groups, the Visigoths, Vandals, and Ostrogoths, repeatedly attacked Rome's borders, and Rome no longer had the strength to stop them. In 410 CE, the Visigoths sacked Rome itself. The eternal city wasn't so eternal after all. The Vandals sacked Rome again in 455 CE. These weren't just military defeats, they were psychological blows that shattered Rome's aura of invincibility. Finally, in 476 CE, a Germanic leader named Odoacer deposed the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustus. The Western Roman Empire was finished. But the story didn't end there. The Eastern Roman Empire, later called the Byzantine Empire, survived and thrived for nearly another 1,000 years, preserving Roman law, culture, and learning until 1453.